Catholic pilgrims, as we learn from one of Spain's most revered saints, Saint Teresa of Avila, a spirited doctor of the Church. Join me, Amy Thomas, once a week as we read from Saint Teresa's book, The Interior Castle. Welcome, my fellow Catholic pilgrims, to episode 53. Today we will finish the readings from chapter 2 of The Sixth Mansion. Have you ever been deceived? Unfortunately, I'm sure you have. We all have at some point. One of the things I appreciate so much about the Catholic Church is that it doesn't just blindly believe every quote-unquote miracle reported or every single sighting of Mary reported. There's a pretty rigorous examination of miracles, sightings, and claimed spiritual phenomenon. My daughter once had an exorcist visit her church at college to share with the students about his line of priestly work, and he told the students that anytime there is a report of demonic possession, they always seek to find a natural cause first and rule those out. I appreciate that kind of scrutiny because it keeps people from feeling like the church is deceiving them. When I was in the Holy Land, we visited the Church of the Annunciation, which houses the cave where Mary lived when St. Gabriel visited her. When I posted pictures of it online, a few people said to me, "The House of Mary's in Loreto, Italy. It was carried there by angels." And I was a bit skeptical. I hadn't really heard about this. So I asked our very knowledgeable Israeli-born Catholic guide what was up with the house there in Nazareth and the house in Loreto. He kind of sighed and said, "Well, this is one of those stories that has been embellished on. The cave where Mary lived is here in Nazareth. The house in Loreto is part of the house that was moved to keep it safe during the time of the Crusades." So when I got back home, I went to look it up, and sure enough, stones were moved from Nazareth to Loreto, Italy during the Crusades, and it was moved by a Byzantine Greek family whose name translates into angeli, which means angels. So the angel family moved the stones. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, it is so very important for us as Catholics to be on our game with truthful information and not believing every reported miracle or sighting, because as soon as it comes up false or partly true, people are going to feel deceived and possibly start to doubt what the church teaches. And I'm telling you, if people feel deceived in the spiritual realm, even one time, you may lose them forever, which is so unfortunate, so we must be careful. And that's why I'm so glad that the Catholic Church, again, is scrutinizing with miracles and reported sightings and spiritual phenomenon, and the church guides and teaches us that we can be deceived by ourselves, by the world, and by the devil, and so we need to be very careful. St. Teresa is going to talk about ways we can know if we are being deceived by the devil or if we are really receiving a special grace and favor from Christ. The devil is a tricky being, and so St. Teresa will give us some helpful tips. We will be reading from The Sixth Mansion, chapter 2, numbers 10 through 15. Before we begin, let's hear from our sponsor, Chrism Press. What does it mean to have a good death? In The Good Death of Kate Montclair, author and professor Daniel McInerney explores this question through the story of Kate, a woman facing her own mortality. Follow her journey as she reconnects with old friends, confronts past mistakes, and decides how she wants to live her final days. This powerful and moving novel will leave you thinking about life, death, and what really matters. Go to chrismpress.com to purchase your copy, and if you use the coupon code Pilgrim15, you can receive 15% off your first order. Okay, on with the show. Perhaps you wonder why we may feel more secure against deception concerning this favor than in other cases. I think it is for these reasons. Firstly, because the devil cannot give such delicious pain. He may cause pleasure or delight, which appears spiritual, but is unable to add suffering, especially suffering of so keen a sort, united to peace and joy of soul. His power is limited to what is external. Suffering produced by him is never accompanied with peace, but with anxieties and struggles. Secondly, because this welcome storm comes from no region over which Satan has control. Thirdly, because of the great benefits left in the soul, which, as a rule, is resolute to suffer for God and longs to bear many crosses. It is also far more determined than before to withdraw from worldly pleasures and intercourse and other things of the same sort. It is very clear that this is no fiction. The imagination may counterfeit some favors, but not this, which is too manifest to leave room for doubt. Should anyone still remain uncertain, let her know that hers were not genuine impulses. That is, if she is dubious as to whether or no she experienced them, for they are as certainly perceived by the soul as is a loud voice by the ears. It is impossible for these experiences to proceed from melancholy, whose whims arise and exist only in the imagination, whereas this emotion comes from the interior of the soul. I may be mistaken, but I shall not change my opinion until I hear reasons to the contrary from those who understand these matters. I know someone who has always greatly dreaded such deceptions, yet could never bring herself to feel any alarm about this state of prayer. Our Lord also uses other means of rousing the soul. For instance, when reciting vocal prayer without seeking to penetrate the sense, a person may be seized with a delightful fervor, as if suddenly encompassed with a fragrance powerful enough to diffuse itself through all the senses. I do not assert that there really is any perfume, but use this comparison because it somewhat resembles the manner by which the spouse makes his presence understood, moving the soul to a delicious desire of enjoying him and thus disposing it to heroic acts and causing it to render him fervent praise. This favor springs from the same source as the former, but causes no suffering here, nor are the soul's longings to enjoy God painful. This is what is more usually experienced by the soul. For the reasons already given, there appears no cause here for fear, but rather for receiving it with thanksgiving. Before we get into what St. Teresa says, let me just offer this up. If you feel like you are being deceived by yourself, someone else, or the devil in your spiritual life, get yourself a spiritual director to talk to. If you have a serious issue, it's good to talk these things over with someone that is outside the issue. So with that being said, let's look at the 3 points St. Teresa brings up with regards to deception in the sixth mansion. She says, quote, "First, because the devil cannot give such delicious pain, he may cause pleasure or delight, which appears spiritual, but is unable to add suffering, especially suffering of so keen a sort, united to peace and joy of soul. His power is limited to what is external. Suffering produced by him is never accompanied with peace, but with anxieties and struggles." Unquote. Not everything that brings us pleasure is good for us. That is a huge fallacy that way too many people believe in these days. Hey, if it was bad for me, it wouldn't feel so good. Or if we flip that, we might say, if it was good for me, it would make me suffer in any way. This isn't true either, as any serious athlete can tell you. To become a good athlete, you may suffer a lot through your training and discipline, but it will ultimately be good for you. But what St. Teresa here is talking about is the pain of the sixth mansion that we've been talking about in our previous readings. Remember, she said that God will cause us to desire him so much that it will cause pain, but it will be a good pain, and the suffering you endure will not be filled with anxiety, but joy at what is to come. The devil can never cause this. He can never cause suffering that is filled with peace and joy. Next, St. Teresa says, quote, Secondly, because this welcome storm comes from no region over which Satan has control, unquote. Now, I'm not totally sure what she means here, but I think it's this. We know as we progress through the mansions that we're going to face hardships and struggles. But the more we travel through the mansions, the more we can accept these trials because we are growing spiritually. There are saints who even welcome the suffering, ask to suffer for God, and are grateful when they are allowed to suffer as Christ suffered. None of that comes from the devil. The devil will never cause you to welcome suffering for love of God and to desire to unite it to Christ. That's just not anything he is ever going to tempt you with. People who are non-believers and those in the first mansions are tempted by the devil to avoid suffering or storms at all costs because suffering is seen as pointless. A deep believer understands this is not the case. Lastly, St. Teresa says, quote, thirdly, because of the great benefits left in the soul, which, as a rule, is resolute to suffer for God and longs to bear many crosses, it is also far more determined than before to withdraw from worldly pleasures and intercourse and other things of the same sort, unquote. Remember, the devil wants you steeped in worldly pleasures. Just this last week, I found out that a song I have grown up liking has lyrics that are not good at all. I had just never actually fully listened to the lyrics and tried to understand them. But once I heard them read to me, I was like, whoa, my goodness, the song's message is horrible. And I immediately resolved to never purposefully listen to it again. Now, years ago when I was lukewarm in my faith, I would have heard the lyrics read to me and I would have tried to justify still listening to it. I wouldn't have wanted to let go of that worldly pleasure because I liked the song. I mean, that's a pretty weak worldly pleasure, but I still would have been unwilling to stop listening to it. Today, though, much more strengthened in my faith, I'm fine with letting it go. I mean, it's just a song, and if it's bad, I can certainly give it up for Christ. So yes, the devil will try to deceive us Catholic pilgrims, but there are ways we can know that whatever we are going through is not from the devil. In summary, if what we are going through is helping us accept our crosses with peace and joy, and we are willing to give up worldly pleasures for love of God, then you can be sure that the devil has no part in that. The devil wants us confused, satiated on distractions, anxiety-riddled over crosses, and robbed of all peace and joy. But like I said, if you are unsure about what is going on with you, talk with someone you trust that is deeply formed in their Catholic faith. None of us wants to be deceived, and sometimes we need fresh eyes and an objective listener to help us see things clearly. So that is all for today. I hope you have a very blessed day. I'll see you back here soon, and until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.